Hey, welcome back. I am with a dear friend and someone who's been here before. One of our top shows ever was with Dr. Tom O'Brien, and he is at it again. He's got a new book, and man, Dr. Tom, you have been doing so much good work out in our world, in our industry, and the fact that you now have taken that and put it into a book and you're going out to help the millions and millions of people with it, it's really heartwarming. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's a real privilege to be here with you, it really is.
Well,
it's always great to hang out wherever we're hanging, but it's nice to do it here and to talk about this. Thank you.
Totally. It's fun, and for me, I love, I would be asking you these questions anyways. So I want to share you with our world, and it's important that we all understand what's happening in autoimmunity, because this is something that is kind of new. It is something that's now kind of rising in our kind of to epidemic levels, if you will. And there's not enough people talking about it, and you're one of the leading voices in it. So what drove you to step in and really start talking about this publicly with what you've been seeing?
When I dove into the world of gluten sensitivity and with or without celiac disease back in 2004 and started lecturing, the reason I started lecturing was because I saw all the manifestations that were possible with a gluten sensitivity, not just in the gut. If you pull at a chain, the chain always breaks at the weakest link. I mean, I've been saying this for years, right? So at one end, the middle, the other end, your heart, your brain, your liver, and your kidney. Well, what happens in the brain, or what happens in the kidney, or what happens in the heart or the liver? It's an autoimmune mechanism that occurs if the weak link in your chain is that particular tissue. So you eat gluten, gluten's the gasoline on the fire. If the weak link is your brain, you get brain antibodies, elevated brain antibodies. And when you get, that's what happened to me. I did this test, kind of a screening test on myself when it was research only. I had 3 elevated antibodies to my brain. I had myelin basic protein antibodies elevated. That means you're killing off myelin. That's what happens in MS. That's the mechanism of MS. I had cerebellar antibodies elevated. That's the area of the brain that controls your muscle function. And that's the main reason why elders can't dance up and down the stairs. They have to hold the railing. It's not that they just don't have confidence because their brain is not registering where they're stepping and all that. So I had these antibodies elevated. And I said, what is this? I was in the peak of my triathlon career. I was in my mid-40s and just kicking butt and taking names and having fun with it, feeling really healthy and vibrant in life. But all of a sudden, I'm looking at this mechanism that's killing off my brain. And I didn't know it. I didn't feel it. And that got me into this whole world of, if you have a sensitivity to gluten, it manifests somewhere in your body. And what's the manifestation look like? How can you tell? You look for the antibodies. So that got me thinking about the world of autoimmunity. And now what we know, because the science is really clear, now what we know, everybody thinks that cardiovascular disease is the most common cause of death, right? And that is the most common manifestation. But the mechanism that sets it up is autoimmune. The mechanism that sets up cancer is autoimmune. Just read the studies. It's really clear, but no one talks about it. And the analogy that I came up with recently is, if your car's blowing black smoke out the exhaust pipe, you don't treat the exhaust pipe, right? You've got to figure out where's the black smoke coming from. And it's an autoimmune mechanism that triggers Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cardiovascular disease, cancers. It's autoimmune. It's the elephant in the room that no one's been talking about.
It's interesting because a lot of people say, well, I'm fine with gluten because I eat it and I don't get gas, I don't get bloating. It's cool.
Right.
But that's not where it's showing up, because maybe your digestive tract isn't your weak link in your case.
Exactly. If it is the weak link, you'll feel it in your gut. If it's not the weak link, or your child's weak link, they may be diagnosed with attention deficit, and the school's demanding they be put on Ritalin. And in the Journal of Attention Disorders in 2006, they published a study where they showed every attention deficit patient, 130 kids, 6 months on a gluten-free diet, every parent or the child reported improvement in all 12 DSM-4 markers of attention deficit. Every marker improved in every category on a gluten-free diet.
Wow.
You think?
Wow.
You know, so it just depends on where the weak link is as to where it's going to manifest.
So let's get a little bit further behind this. And if you need background on this, if you're listening to this or watching this, we did a whole show on gluten sensitivity, and it's a must watch. Go watch it or listen to it. It's really important to kind of understand the gluten thing. But let's just dip into that a little bit.
Sure.
What? All of a sudden, you know, people say, my family's been eating pasta for years, and now all of a sudden gluten, right? Like what? Like people think that gluten is this kind of passing trend, and it's kind of like the issue du jour that will go away. How is that not the case?
I'm half Italian, and I've never told you, but my cousins call me Tommaso. It's Tommaso Ceschini. That's my name. You know, I grew up with homemade pastas and all of that. I was a baker. When I had hair down to here in Ann Arbor back in the 70s, late 60s and 70s, I was a baker.
You were around gluten your whole life. You were around gluten your whole life.
I was. You know, it was great. So why this thing now? What is it? Now the studies are out. The science is really clear. Harvard's published the studies on this last year. Every single human gets intestinal permeability when they eat wheat. Every single human, every time. Now, we get new brain cells, not brain cells, you regenerate an entire new body every 7 years. Some cells are really quick. Your gut, the inside lining of your gut's every 3 days, 3 to 5 days. Some cells are much slower. Every 7 years, you have a whole new body, right? So you eat gluten, you tear the lining of your gut, but it heals, fastest growing cells in the body. You have a sandwich for lunch, you tear the lining, it heals. Pasta for dinner, you tear the lining, it heals. Day in, day out, no problem until one day you don't heal anymore. Now you start getting the symptoms of a sensitivity to gluten, and the symptoms will manifest wherever your weak link is. So you may not correlate that the ear pain you get, or the joint pain, or the problem with your menstrual cycles, all of a sudden you didn't have problems before, now you do, and it may be a trigger from gluten. But the point is, everyone has a problem. No human has the enzymes to digest wheat completely. It's only partially digested, which means it causes inflammation in the gut, and we now know everyone, when they eat it, gets tears in the lining of their gut, intestinal permeability. And for most people, it heals, so they don't have any symptoms. But you cross a line, and at some point, it doesn't heal anymore.
So is it just gluten? Is it casein? Is it soy? Is it anything that would influence the body towards some sort of reaction with their permeability? Or is gluten the kind of the big bad guy that's being like lined up in this lineup here?
Detlef Chupin is a gastroenterologist at Harvard, very famous guy in the world of celiac disease. And he and his team use this technique called confocal endomicroscopy. Really good Scrabble words, right? Really good. And what it was is they put a camera down in the gut and they watch single cells in the gut. They can see single cells. And they took pictures of single cells, and you see how they're lined up. And then they fed these people, these are irritable bowel syndrome patients at Harvard that were failures to all therapy for a year. These were the worst of the worst. And they said, let's see if there's food sensitivities that may be a trigger here. So they looked at wheat, dairy, soy, and yeast. Those are the four things. And they exposed all these people to each of those things while they were watching the cells of the gut to see what happened.
Sequentially, not simultaneously.
Correct. And what did they find? 39% of the people with wheat had a reaction. 26, 24, I don't remember. For soy was next, and then yeast, and then dairy. Boom, 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 boom. But wheat was the worst at 39% of them. And what did it show? Within minutes, within 5 minutes of them eating the food and the food getting into the intestine, within 5 minutes, you see the cells starting to gap. And you see the lining of the cell go poof, where intestinal permeability happens. It's unbelievable. You see it now. So 39% of the people 1 year as failures for irritable bowel at Harvard, nothing was working. They found that to be the case. So you now can see it happening. The technology is improving all the time, right? So there's no question with the scientists that this is a problem. For many, it'll manifest as a problem. For some, they're not tearing the lining yet. It's healing when they tear the lining, so they're not getting the symptoms. But every human has this with wheat. I don't know of any other food, and answer your question, I don't know of any other food that's every human. I don't know of any other food. I don't know, egg, some people have real problems with eggs, some with peanuts, some with soy, some with yeast, some with dairy, absolutely. And for those people, that could be the trigger for their irritable bowel or whatever other symptoms they're having. But with wheat, it's every single person.
Every person, every time, then some people heal, some people lose the ability to heal, and things start to really break.
Right. You're going to cross a threshold, the straw that broke the camel's back, that's going to happen somewhere in your life. It may be when you're 2 years old, 22 years old, or 72 years old, but you'll cross that line depending on your other assaults in your gut as to when you stop healing very well.
So it could have happened during a divorce, could have happened during a business problem, it could have happened, after an illness. A lot of times things are kind of compounded, and that's when things oftentimes will also break, and you just lose that, like loss of oral tolerance, loss of tolerance, period, right? Yes. So, and a lot of people can remember when things broke, right? That's life.
Yes, we often hear that someone had a symptom begin after a traumatic event. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. The stress hormones may have been the trigger. It's pretty common to see that.
Yeah. So I want to lay one thing to rest, and I don't know how much of this, I don't want to get too deep into this, but it's important, is there's all this talk around the internet and the community about like good wheat and bad wheat. Well, here's like here's an organic wheat that came from an heirloom thing. This is genetically modified. This is from Italy. Italian wheat is bulletproof. So is it all wheat? Is it hybridized wheat? Like, are we seeing differences in any of that?
We are seeing some differences, but we are seeing that the ancient strains still trigger the same type of immune response. So it's really easy for the audience out there. It's really easy for you to find out if you have a problem. You just got to do the right test. If you do a comprehensive test to see, is your immune system fighting wheat? If it's fighting wheat, you got a problem. Like it or not, you may feel fine, but you got a problem because your immune system's attacking it. And if you don't get, the lucky people are the ones that get gut pain. They're the lucky ones because there's no arguing. You eat this, you feel like crap.
Yeah, canary in the coal mine, I got it.
Exactly. The unlucky ones are when it's your brain or your heart or your liver or your kidneys.
So let's talk about the magnitude of this, because you're a doctor and you understood that when you were starting to develop immune issues against your own brain tissue, that was really bad news and you needed to do something right then and there.
Yeah.
Most people don't know what the hell any of this means.
Right.
So what happens when your body starts turning on itself? How does this immune system kind of not even malfunction, but function when it turns on us, create such problems?
Well, that's really important what you've just said, because many doctors think when you have an autoimmune mechanism, meaning you're making antibodies against yourself, they say it's an immune system that's gone haywire. No, it's not.
I corrected myself on purpose.
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah. You read the book. That it's an immune system that's trying to protect you. It's really it's doing its best to protect you. And the bottom line, it's the toxicity of this world we live in today. Here's the stats. 250 pounds of toxic chemicals per person per day are being dumped on us in the United States. Right now, 250 pounds per person per day.
That's my allowance.
And that does not include pesticides, fuel derivatives, pharmaceuticals, or food additives. Just chemicals like phthalates, like flame retardant in the clothes we wear, or the dry cleaning stuff that's in your clothes, or when you're sleeping, the flame retardant that's in the sheets. I mean, all of this, the carpets, what's being outgassed from the carpets. You look, because autoimmunity is now the #1 mechanism for getting sick and dying. It wasn't that way 25 years ago or 50 years ago. But you look at the graphs of the amount of toxic chemicals that are being dumped on us, and you look at the graphs of the percentages of people with autoimmune mechanisms going on, they're just like this. They're neck and neck. And that's the problem, is that our immune system is trying to protect us because all these chemicals get into our body and they bind with your cells. And so let's say you've got a heart cell. So you have a heart cell and it's doing its thing, but now a chemical gets in there, let's say it's perchloroethylenes, which are in dry cleaning, right? Perchloroethylene has an attraction to cardiac tissue. So if that stuff's in your bloodstream because you inhale it and it gets into your bloodstream, it has kind of a magnetic approach. It goes right like to a heart cell. Now that cell is no longer a heart cell, it's a foreign cell. It's called a neoepitope. It's a new thing that's never been there before.
So it's heart cell plus foreign cell somehow bound together, and the body goes, what the hell is this?
What is this? And it starts attacking this neoepitope. When it attacks this new cell, you damage the heart cell because it's still part of it. Now, see, why is there a normal level of antibodies to our own tissue? Why would we ever have antibodies to our thyroid or to our heart? Well, that's because cells die. You know, they get old and they die. And you got to get rid of the old cells, or you get some damage. You're exposed to chlorine and it damages your thyroid. So you got damaged thyroid cells. So you have thyroid antibodies to get rid of the damaged thyroid cells, because you make new cells every day, you lose some every day.
So it's natural.
It's natural.
This is the garbage company. They
Exactly.
clear the cells, they clear the system of dead cells or cells that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing so that you can keep functioning.
Got to have that. Got to have that, or we wouldn't be here today. But when you have elevated antibodies to your thyroid, or elevated antibodies to your heart, or elevated antibodies to your brain, you got a problem, because you're killing off more cells than you're making. And eventually you'll kill off enough cells that you start getting the symptoms of that system, weak link in the chain, that system not functioning very well.
If I keep taking away heart cells, I will have heart problems. If I keep taking away brain cells, I will start to see cognitive decline. I will start to see brain problems.
Exactly.
Common sense.
Exactly. And what this book is about is to get this big picture overview, because we now know cardiovascular disease is autoimmune in its initiating phases. Cancer is autoimmune in its initiating phases. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementias, diabetes, they're autoimmune.
So is gluten, okay, so everyone's got a problem with gluten. We understand that. And gluten is definitely the bad guy in the lineup right now. But is gluten the only place we could fucking do anything about it, right?
Gosh,
or is it about all of the other stuff as well, right?
Yeah. What you learn here is that in the book, what you learn is get a chlorine shower filter. It's $50. But where we get exposed to the most chlorine is in the shower, because we inhale it and it goes right into the lungs and right through that permeable membrane into the bloodstream. And it's toxic to your thyroid. And you learn that take your shoes off when you walk in the house. Why? Because your shoes were walking along the sidewalk where they sprayed the Roundup to kill the dandelions. You got Roundup on the bottom of your shoes. Now you walk through your house with on your carpeting. Now you got Roundup on your carpeting. And if your kids are, you got little kids are crawling on the floor, now they get Roundup on their hands, and now they get more exposure to the chemical. So you learn little tidbits. And what kind of fish should you get? Which ones are highest in heavy metals? Which ones are not? How do you ask the questions of the butcher? All those things are in here. And the reasons why you want to ask those things are in there.
There's a symphony happening right now. And it's a terrible song, but it's a symphony that's every single one of these instruments in the symphony is some other toxic chemical that's just playing in the background of our environment.
Right.
And a lot of the things we can't do much about. It's in the air. It's like you're going to walk around with a gas mask or something like that. A lot of these things, we're trying to mitigate. So as much as we can mitigate, and that's why I love advocacy. Go after them. Don't buy the crap. There's all that.
Yeah.
But then the straw that breaks most camels' back is this thing that we know is cutting every single time our digestive tract every time we eat it.
Yeah.
So because the world is so dirty, we all now got to be careful about gluten.
It's why gluten sensitivity is going like this. It's because it's the accumulative amount of toxins in your gut that determines. See, gluten is a mild irritant. It really is a mild irritant. And there's no question we've saved millions and millions of lives. When there's a famine in Africa, we send a boatload of wheat over there, you save thousands of lives, right? Every time we do that, you save thousands of lives, no question, because the body can use that food to some degree, but it's also inflammatory, and it triggers this whole inflammatory cascade, which pull on the chain and all that. But it's a mild toxin by itself. That's why most people don't get sick when they eat it. But there are so many other toxins coming in now. You've crossed the threshold. So every human, every time they eat wheat now, that's what the studies show us, they get this tear on the lining called intestinal permeability. And their words are all humans. That's the word they use, all humans.
What's the sample size? How many people do they do this on?
100, 120, something like that. I'm not quite sure, somewhere around that ballpark.
So big enough sample size to know, and for Harvard to be saying this is no joke.
It's no joke. It's not, that's just one of 3 studies that I have on that.
Wow.
It's just the most recent one.
Okay, so the world is dirty, and there are things we can do about it, by the way. Like, I hate when people feel like they're a victim to that.
Yeah.
It's like if you bought Clorox last week, if you bought one of these substances, if you live in a neighborhood that uses Roundup, there's a homeowners association. There's things that you can do about it.
Right.
So I'm not hearing that, right? But you also have to keep the enemy at the gate, and so as much as you can, keep it out of your house while we're trying to fix the world. And then how does one look at kind of an interface with reality, knowing that there's so many things kind of coming in? Like, how do we get proactive on this?
I've got some little Far Side comic type things that I use in some of my presentations. Like, I've got one of the article from some major city newspaper. I think it was the Chicago Tribune. I think it was in the 1950s with nuclear blasts in Nevada, and the article saying how safe it was. It wasn't a problem for anyone, and that's what the government was telling us. And then we have the articles from Life magazine, the picture of a medical doctor with his black bag there, and he's smoking Camels, the cigarette of, Lucky Strike, the cigarette of choice for doctors. That we're told all this stuff, you just can't believe it. You have to go with common sense, right? Go with common sense. Common sense is learn about the studies. You don't have to read the studies. Just learn about them. Just Google some of this stuff, or go to my site. You'll get all this data, or it's in the book. It's in the book, or the last interview that we did together was all about gluten. Well, this makes sense. This just makes sense. Well, what do? You do the proper type of testing to see, do I have a problem right now where my immune system says I'm making antibodies? Am I making antibodies to my brain? Am I making antibodies to myself? Do I have elevated antibodies? If you do, you got a problem in that you've crossed the threshold. If you don't, you've got a window of opportunity still. But when you cross the threshold, when you see that, and when you understand what that means, hopefully it scares the crap out of you so that you then will be more of an advocate for yourself and your family.
Yeah, well, and if it doesn't scare the crap out of you, you're not hearing this well enough.
Yeah.
So, thyroid issues. You have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. We know that a lot of people are now having autoimmune issues there. And so you're saying chlorine in the water, certain things. If I take a test and I find out that there is an immune system issue where something in my body is being attacked by my immune system, what do I do? What's my recourse? How do I deal with this?
You look at, okay, take a step back. All right, so my immune system's trying to protect me. Why is it protecting me? Where is the problem? So the first thing that I would do is you look for a sensitivity to gluten and dairy. Those are the 2 most common foods that one will have a sensitivity to. There can be others also. Soy is very common, egg is common, yeast is common. Those are the top 5. So the most common trigger for the inflammatory cascade in your body is what's on the end of your fork. That's the most common trigger. And you cannot drink Coca-Cola. Even on occasion, you cannot do it because it's inflammatory. You put a dime in a can of Coke and you leave it there for 24 hours and then pour it out. The lines around the dime are gone. It ate the metal off. What do you think it's doing in your body, right? So the things that we've grown up as a society that believes, hey, I can slack off a little once in a while as long as I feel fine. And how do we feel fine? We're doing 2-3 cups of coffee a day to keep the engine revved up so that we can keep going. Why? Because you're really tired, because you're worn out, right? So taking a realistic evaluation is, okay, I got a problem here. Why do I have this problem? I don't know. I don't know why I have it, but I'm going to spend some time and find out. And what I tell people now, I've backed off a little bit over time, and it's, if you find this hard, just allocate 1 hour a week. 1 hour a week, I'm going to go online, I'm going to read a little bit about this kind of thing. All right, I'll read this book, I'll allocate 1 hour a week. And if it takes you 6 months to really get it down as to what the lifestyle habits are that are setting you up, if it takes you 6 months, who cares? It gives you the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, and just be patient, be kind to yourself, do it at the pace that you can do it, but do it.
a lot of people feel like what's prohibitive here is the testing, right? Early on, I remember, some of these tests when I was running them back when I was in clinic, they're like $1,400. It wasn't cheap.
Yeah.
Has that changed at all? Is insurance paying at all? Because a lot of people are like, damn, I can't afford to get healthy, when what you should be asking is, I can't afford to be sick. Yeah. But how's the economics worked out?
Yeah, it's starting to come down. Some of the labs are wisening up now and seeing that there's a whole market of these what are called functional tests, that you're not just looking for a disease, you're looking to see what's not functioning very well, right? And so initially, some of the tests for gluten sensitivity that were more comprehensive were about $600, somewhere around there. Now they're down to about $300. So you can find out if you have a sensitivity to the most common food that people eat for about $300, and that's comprehensive. The information's on my website. You can learn all about that kind of thing, what tests they are and all that.
Great.
But it's down a bit. Now the tests for autoimmunity, right now, as far as I know, there's only one lab that's still doing a comprehensive overview of 24 different tissues. And that test is about $600.
$600?
That one is.
Which is still down, because I remember it was way more than that back in the day.
I purposely called the laboratories to say, hi, if you were looking at ASCA antibodies, IgG, how much would that be? And I wrote it down. And what about IgA antibodies? How much would that be? And I wrote it down. Because I was looking at this 24 different antibody tests that they were doing. And I compared it. I did the first 8 antibodies, and the cost was $1,538 for the first 8 of the 24 antibodies. And I stopped there because the cost of the test from the lab was $600. But $1,538 just for 8 antibodies, but the $600 test was doing 24 antibodies. So I knew it was really fair in terms of competitive marketplace for the test.
So if I want to get this test, do I have to get my doctor to do it? Because if my doctor's like, bah, I don't believe in any of that crap. A lot of people get stuck. The guy who guards the gate oftentimes poo-poos stuff that he hasn't read yet in the scientific literature.
Yeah, well, I'm really clear. I try my best to say, please take this information to your doctor, ask him to look into it for you. It may take a week or two if they'll do it. And when they look into it, the science is so clear. It's like, oh my God, this is great. Sure, Mrs. Patient, let's try this out. So I always want people to go back to their doctor and work with your team right now. If they won't do it, they poo-poo it because they really don't know and they don't want to look bad, so they say, you don't need that. Then you can go to my site and you can get the test there.
Got it. Great. So there's a way to have access to the test.
Yeah.
Then what about interpretation of the test?
Yeah.
That's a challenge, right? Like,
that is a
what
challenge.
does this say? I don't know.
I actually have doctors call me all the time. Hey, can you tell me what this means? Right? So the laboratories have teams now that do interpretations for doctors. They don't do them so much for the patients.
Right.
I have a team that does interpretations for patients, and you can do it on my site. I'm not here to market my site, but there's also a list of doctors who the laboratories will have lists of doctors in their area who know these tests, use these tests. So you might find someone in your area where you can get the test done.
Got it. Great. So work with your doctor, help them help you, and then at that point, then there are lifestyle modifications that need to happen, right? There's no medicine per se that fixes this, which is what we've all kind of been trained to believe, right?
Dr. Dale Bredesen runs the Buck Institute at UCLA. That's the Alzheimer's Research Center at UCLA. He published the paper in November 2014, reversing Alzheimer's in 9 out of 10 people, card-carrying Alzheimer's, stuck in facilities, can't live at home, they're back living home. If they were at home, unable to work, they're back to work. Reversing it in 5 years. How did he do it? It's a 34-point checklist. Top of the list, sensitivity to foods. Top of the foods, gluten, number 1, dairy, number 2. You just go down the list of these 34 things and you're looking for antibodies to the brain, you're looking for damage to the blood-brain barrier, but it's 34 different things. They have this, okay, fix it. Do they have this? Okay, fix it. Do they have homocysteine? Okay, fix that. Do they have this? Fix that. Just down the list. There's never going to be a pill that's going to reverse autoimmunity. Come on, guys. You can't live the lifestyle that's throwing gasoline on the fire and expect that you're going to take a pill so you can keep doing that.
Right. That is the promise of pharmaceutical America.
That's right.
Right? And that's it. You know, buy our shit,
Let's
invest in our
Let's
stock. Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. Like, don't worry. We're making a next blockbuster drug that's going to come and save you from having to think about anything.
That's because we see it on television. You know, we see the gals like this and the guys like this, and they're all happy playing volleyball. But in the background it says, "Warning: this may cause liver cancer, leukemia, and you may die." Right? But you don't listen to the voice. You look at the people instead. We're selective to what we want to hear.
Yeah, and what we want to hear is this is going to be easy.
Right.
This is going to be easy. Now, you know what's easier than eating gluten is not eating gluten. And that's where most people get stuck. They're like, that sounds like such an impossible lifestyle. It's like, well, no, because you have so much less energy, so much less function, and so much less future on this path.
That's exactly right.
And that's the part that most people, it's the same reason people don't save money. It's the same reason people don't think ahead in life, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. So reading this book, and it's got a forward by our friend Mark Hyman. This is great. I mean, listen, we run in a lot of the same circles. This world is filled with some really remarkable docs who have been pushing the envelope on the science, and you're contemporary with some of the best people out there. Reading this book will transform a life only if the person who reads it understands, wakes up, and does something, presumably, right? So,
No. Reading the book is going to give you an OMG. You may choose to do nothing about it, but you'll never be able to go back to being blindly stupid again.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. You know, you now will know. And you may choose not to make changes at this point in your life because it's not that important to you, but at some point it will be important, and you'll know the questions to ask. You'll know the pathways to go down in your thought process when all of a sudden you've packed on 20 pounds in the last 2 years and you can't get out of bed in the morning, you're wearing socks to sleep at night, and you don't have any energy for your husband, and you're wondering what's going on, and you're 34 years old, and now you're diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroid disease. Now you have an autoimmune thyroid disease. Now it becomes important. You will know the path to follow. You'll know the questions to ask.
How much brain tissue needs to be hauled away before you think it's important? How much heart tissue needs to be hauled away? And so that's really the question here, is like, how long can you have the body attack itself before things start to break? And look, if it starts earlier in life, you might have a little while longer, but you will see symptoms in those broken link systems within months or years, depending on the system.
You know, this is a stat that most people don't seem to grasp, and it's just so startling to me. For the first time in the history of the human species, for the very first time, the New England Journal of Medicine tells us that children born today have a shorter projected lifespan than their parents. They're going to get sick earlier, get diagnosed with disease at an earlier age, and die earlier than their parents. We've always lived longer than the generation before us. That's not true anymore. We're living shorter lives. And it's because we're getting sick earlier because there's so much toxicity in our world. This is a wake-up call. And the mechanism for it, the mechanism for all of it, it's not gluten. The mechanism for all of it is the autoimmune syndrome. And you can identify it years before you've killed off so much tissue, you now have a big problem. That's what the book's about, is to understand this is the foundational mechanism. That's why I'm so proud. You know, I'm kind of shy about this. I'm not shy about much in life, but I'm shy about this. I'm so proud that some of the world leaders that wrote endorsements for this book, not just my friends, I mean the world leaders, I sent them the book and they said, oh God, this is excellent. They wrote the endorsements, and it makes me proud. You know, it's my 30 years of work, and it's the message that has to get out to everybody so that they understand what they're up against, and then they'll make their own decisions how to move forward.
But the ostrich approach doesn't really work that
right.
well. One more thing I really want to get into is when we're talking about the immune system, and we're talking about this kind of ramped up civil war, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're not facing the outside borders. The troops are in, kind of run around, kind of like going through the neighborhoods, trying to pull out, attack itself, right? How much energy requirement is that? Because the number one thing people complain about going to the doctor is lack of energy. How much energy gets sucked into the immune system?
The majority. It's a really easy question if people do this and they do it the right way. Here's the question. On a 1 to 10, 10's the amount of energy you should have. 5 is half as much. But wait a minute. Take your willpower out of the equation.
Willpower and coffee out of the equation.
Exactly. Give me a truth response. What's your true energy level? And I always pause after I say 1 to 10, 10's the amount of energy, 5 is half as much. I pause there just for a moment because everybody, they've got their number. I'm an 8, I'm a 9. I say, well, wait a minute. Take your willpower out of the equation. Then they go, oh, and their shoulders drop.
Flat.
Right. That's how much energy it takes. That's the amount of energy it's taking. The majority.
The delta between your will, like what you have to force with will.
Exactly.
And where you live.
Exactly. And you can't keep driving your car in second gear on the highway of life floored. You can't keep doing it, right? You got to learn to shift into 4th or 5th gear and cruise at a faster speed, but cruise and not be straining the system so much. That's the goal.
It's really interesting. I've been recording shows all day, and we were talking about myofascial issues and kind of the connective tissue and how much energy it takes when the body is crimped and it doesn't have the flow of kind of the rivers of fluid and life in the body. And now you take that metaphor and you kind of translate that into kind of energy systems and how much energy it takes to fight yourself. And damn it, if we could just get out of our own way, we wouldn't be complaining about any of this stuff.
Yeah, you feel like $1 million bucks when you calm this down.
Yeah.
It's so worth doing, even for just a couple of months. When you do it for a couple of months, you say, oh my God, I feel like a kid again, or I feel like I'm 16, or if you're in your 50s, I feel like I'm 25, that your energy just comes back.
When a lot of my audience knows this already, is like I have gluten intolerance, I have dairy intolerance, I got all this stuff, right? And so when I'm on a gong, I'm at zero tolerance for all of it, right? And I'm not bad. I'm like the guy that falls over, like keeled over or anything, and it's fine. And then it's like your 100 days are over, and it's like, oh, I deserve myself a little treat. And then you just have that like wah wah, and you just feel your light flickering a little bit.
You feel your life force just tempering down. You feel the dimmer switch just going like this.
Yeah, so it's just not worth it. So on gong, off gong, whatever, I just don't bother. Like once in a while it sneaks in and it's just like, okay, that kind of sucked. It's, I'm not dying from it, but it's just, I could feel the difference. It's not worth ingesting something that brings me down.
Well, here's the kicker, and what you learn in the book is when you do the right test and you see this is your baseline, and you go, oh my God, I've got elevated antibodies to my heart. And that's your baseline. It may not be important for you right now to do something about it, but when it is important, you start applying it, then you go back 6 months or a year later, you do the test again, you see the antibodies are back to normal. Let me give you one example. This really does it well. 44-year-old guy came in. His father died at 44 of a massive coronary. His 2 older brothers died in their 40s of massive coronaries. He now is 44. When he was 28, his last brother died, and he went to a cardiologist that put him on a statin. The guy looked like the epitome of health when he came into me. He was 12% body fat, worked out regularly, his diet was squeaky clean, never cheated. He knew that he had to take care of himself, right? So all of his doctors told him he was in perfect health, all his blood tests were great. So he came in to see me, we did the autoimmune panel on him. He had all 3 antibodies to his heart sky high. All 3 of them sky high. What does that mean? When you have elevated antibodies, you're killing off the tissue. And he said, what? Well, why? And he said, is it a mistake? I said, no, every test is done twice, every test. Well, why? I said, I don't know, let's find out. He had 6 of the 10 peptides of gluten elevated, and he had dairy elevated. We put him on a gluten-free, dairy-free diet. That's all I did, gluten-free, dairy-free diet. Didn't give him any vitamins, he was in good health, everything else. Came back in 6 months, he said, I've never felt so good in my life. We did the test again, the antibodies of the heart were down to normal. He said, you saved my life. And I said, well, probably this knowledge of, that probably did, given your genetic family history. That's what we're up against. He felt like $1 million bucks. All of his doctors told me he was in the best of health. 12% body fat, energy great, highly productive in his work in the world. So to the outside world, he looked great. Inside, he was fighting for his life.
Can we talk about how this, it's really hard to identify when you're in a renaissance. We're in a renaissance in medicine right now.
Yeah.
Like this has fundamentally transformed. Like our understanding of autoimmunity and immunology in general has really catapulted medicine to the next level since we ran into all these issues, right?
Yes, yes. It's marvelous. It's the world of functional medicine. And the idea is, I really like this analogy. If your car's blown out black smoke, you don't treat the exhaust pipe, right? You got to find out where it's coming from. And no, it's not coming from a vitamin B deficiency. The question is, why do you have a vitamin B deficiency, right? And it helps to give vitamin B, but why is the problem there? That you want to go back and look further back. And there is this movement. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people now that have wisened up and want answers. And the internet has helped a lot, but it's also confused a lot. There's a lot of garbage out there. So you want to look to the science. And most people don't read the science. You shouldn't have to, but you look to the guys that are telling you, here's the science and here's the study. And this is what the study says, right? So 1 hour a week, and you can move yourself forward in learning more about, for you and your family, where the problems might be.
I love it. I love it. The book is called The Autoimmune Fix. Dr. Tom O'Brien, I'm going to put that right there. This is how you do it, right? Is you read about it from people who can aggregate all the data and help you with it. So, man, I cannot thank you enough for doing what you do.
Thank you,
I love
man.
your work. I love everything about the stance that you've taken. And I think that this is going to save millions of lives.
I really hope so. That's my goal.
That's why we do what we do, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you so much.